Here it is. Dundreary's latest foray into the extended pseudo-utility luxury vehicle market. The Landstalker XL. More SUV than the average middle-class family of two will ever know what to even do with. Over the years, the Landstalker marquee has transformed itself from being the SUV for people who felt too ambiguous to buy a Cavalcade in the early 2000s, to being the SUV that people buy because a Cavalcade is just a bit too modest by today's standards. The XL has grown exponentially, in both size and price, to fit the modern consumer, yet its presuppositions remain the same. Anyone behind the wheel of one of these oversized financial flexes falls into two categories, each with their own uniquely frail superiority complexes. For instance, the owner of the XL could be a semi-successful businessman, seduced by the idea of taking their kids camping and stuffing the trunk with copious amounts of unnecessary camping appliances. Though the only item that ever seems to grace this cheaply carpeted trunk is the same pair of overpriced clubs that never even see the green. All because they're too busy with drinking at the resort instead. Alternatively, the SUV could belong to the divorced wife of that same businessman, roaming the San Andreas Peninsula in search of fuel for her wine mom personality trait. Whatever the case may be, in most circumstances it would seem the XL was purely designed for the weight of one's ego instead of the weight of a family's. The only baggage the Landstalker will ever carry is emotional baggage. The Landstalker is yet another symptom of the chronic overindulgence we have for SUVs. Commodities for those of us who preach the values of environmentalism from behind the hand-stitched wheel of our luxurious high horse. A new wave of self-described sport utility vehicles have begun to pool within the suburbs, slowly seeping through the urban cracks of the aging neighborhoods of the everyman, awaiting their fate of gentrification. Long gone are the days of the minivan or the full-size sedan. In their wake lies a generation of homogenized, oversized people carriers, most of which were never intended to see a speck of dirt, or the city limits. Before the 1980s, people transported their extended nuclear families around with station wagons and vans. But just as the rock and roll movement was bought and paid for by the end of the 70s, the station wagon was beginning to wane in favor of minivans like the Moonbeam, as well as the very first example of the SUV as we know it today. See, Dundreary owes its success to the industry pioneers of carryalls and urbanized off-roaders, those being vehicles like the Rancher XL. No, not that one. This one. And the Seminole Frontier. Not that one either. This one. Canis, the same company responsible for the original patented militarized off-roader, its descendant the Mesa. And this... next. Were responsible for defining what a mid-sized family utility vehicle would be. It would have to be a vehicle which was capable of appeasing those who wanted to trailblaze new paths, and tailgating slower cars on the interstate, all meeting the needs of the average American family. This ambition was soon rewarded, as the mid-sized SUV skyrocketed in popularity. Before long, every other manufacturer was reproducing or drafting designs for their own seminal competitors. And thus began the arms race for larger and larger vehicles in an effort to sell the car with the highest center of gravity before rolling over. Thus, the inevitable age of the luxury SUV followed suit. Substituting conventionality with the display of wealth quickly made the sports and utilities parts of SUV redundant. At least in the case of SUVs like the Granger, Taurus, and Huntley, these vehicles fulfill at least one of the two checkmarks. The thought of a vehicle built for the average family and rebranded as a luxury vehicle is downright paradoxical. And yet here it is. I present to you a vehicle which no one asked for, no one thought they needed, but exists, and sells. If you wanted luxury, there's plenty of cars out there which could do the same thing with brand prestige. If you wanted performance, there are other cars out there which could put your insecurities of appearing average on full display. Instead, Dundreary has taken the SUV, already bereft of its original purpose, and accentuated the appeal of simulated practicality and exclusivity upon a market which already heralded many of these ideas to begin with. Okay, now the ransaction is out of the way. Let's talk about this thing. The Landstalker comes with what looks like a large V6 or something, which probably makes about, who cares, and does 60 in... And the interior isn't exactly bleeding edge in this premium product either. In fact, the center console looks barely changed from the predecessor. If not comfort, the Landstalker can surely transport a large family. No. Enjoy your 4 seats. Yeah, 4. The ride quality is somewhat smooth, but the height and maneuverability of such is comparable to any other skyscraper. But it's stylish. The new Landstalker makes the first generation look like last week's leftovers. All in all, it seems the Landstalker has cornered its market well, a cardboard cutout of an idealized lifestyle, as convincing as Dundreary's advertising campaign. This isn't the worst thing you could find yourself in on the road, but you are what you drive. Look out, Albany. Looks like Dundreary's reclaiming all 4 of those parking spaces again.